Hello everyone, it's Zháne. I became a college student, business owner, and published author by age 18. And this week I want to talk about my publishing journey for my first book. So this is my first novel that I published, my debut. I did talk about it a little bit in my intro video, but I wanted to give kind of more of a comprehensive how did I get to publishing it, officially publishing it. I just have to start really far back. So I have always been a kid or like a little girl that had a really active imagination. And I would always express that either by telling stories, like making stories up in my head, just, sitting and daydreaming. I think throughout all the stages of me growing up, I carried journals or notebooks or just, hey, here's a random piece of paper. I was always writing something. And it wasn't always like some grand, I have, like stories, big things like that. But I was always writing. I just enjoyed writing. I remember one of my favorite things to write, and I still think about it now. I forgot what this book series is called, but if I find it, I will put it in the description. There was a children's book series where it allowed the reader to try to figure out like what the mystery was so they could solve it. Kind of like Carmen Sandiego, but it wasn't Carmen Sandiego. I like that series of books as well, but it wasn't that. So before you got to the end of each chapter, it's like who's the culprit and why, and you had to figure it out. And I used to have like just papers just scattered all over my floor, and I'd be like, okay, well, this clue is this and this clue is that. So it wasn't always like I was writing stories, but I was always writing something. The earliest I remember writing anything of any kind of importance was in kindergarten, JDRF at the time. Now I think it's called Beyond Type 1, which is an organization that does research for type 1 diabetes, which I'm a type 1 diabetic, so of course I was interested in them. They ran a writing contest for children, and I don't know like what the age range was, because again, I was in kindergarten, I was really young. But the winner won like $25 gift card, and then you had like, first, second, third. I don't remember all the details of it. But that was the first time that I wrote any that I remember that I wrote any kind of story with significant like continuity. And I don't actually remember all of the story. I do remember that it was about a South Asian teenager, and he had like 9 or like 11 sisters or something like that, and they went on an adventure. I just don't remember the whole like plot line or anything like that. So I ended up winning that competition. The way that we did it, of course, I'm in kindergarten. I'm not over here like literally writing out. It was like a full-on short story. I told the story, so I spoke, and then my mother would type what I was saying onto the computer. And I wish that I had like a save file of it. I still think about that story now. So that was in kindergarten, and then there's gonna be a little bit of time skip here because I don't really remember what I was writing. Again, I always had a journal. Don't know what's in them. Okay, so fast forward a little while longer. I was still involved with JDRF. Again, now they're called Beyond Type 1, but they're JDRF back then. So I'm gonna refer to them as that. I became the ambassador for JDRF in Tallahassee. They used to have a Tallahassee branch, and I became the ambassador for that. I think when I was 8. So we're gonna have a little bit of a time skip because I don't remember what happened in between there. But I would write speeches, and I would speak at their big run. They had a big run every year to raise money. I don't know if it was a 5K, I don't remember, but something like that. It was just to raise money. And besides the walk itself, they had bounce houses, they had firemen come out, they had vendors. It was huge. It was a huge thing that went on for years. But they always had like a stage and people come speak. And since I was the ambassador, I spoke about my condition and about how it affects me. But I would have to like write my speeches out and then go perform. So that was the next thing that was significant about writing. Again, time passes. I ended up getting my first laptop, which was like a Microsoft Surface. Like it wasn't like a completely powerful like computer. I just mostly used it to type, and I was still pretty young when I decided that I wanted to write a book. So what ended up happening is that I had this computer and I had an idea for a book, and then I'd write it, and then I would abandon it. And then I'd be like, oh, I'm going to start this, and it'll be another book. So I'd write it, and then I abandoned it. So I never finished any of my stories. They were all just, hey, these are ideas. Now, I still have that computer or that laptop, and I'm really happy about that because that means that I can go in the files and find all of those old writings. So by that time, I had started saving and cataloging my stuff into the computer, which is great because it means I can use the ideas now if I find them interesting. Which I've done. A lot of the ideas in my debut novel, which this is my debut novel, came from when I was younger, and I was like, that was a good idea. I never used it. So now I still do that. In school, I always, at least in middle school and high school, I always carried around a journal just to write for fun. I had writing classes, and I had journal or notebooks for my classes and all that, but I just had a separate book that was for writing. So I just kind of tested out different stuff. I was like, okay, let me try poetry and let me try these different things from different books that I was reading. And I just kind of wrote. And I think it's important for me to mention, because I think when I talk about this with people in person, they think that, oh my gosh, you must be writing all this significant stuff. No, the stuff was not significant. Most of it was not significant. Most of it, if I read it today, is unusable. There's nothing I can do with it. It was literally just because I enjoyed writing. And I'm not exactly sure where I got that from. I've always been a bookworm, so I've always been in books. I'm always reading books, always reading books. So maybe that's where I got my love of writing. I was like, oh, I love these stories and I want to make more. But to be honest, I've been doing it so long that I don't remember what the original reason was. I can say that writing has helped me through a lot. I went through so much during middle school, high school, and starting college that I feel like writing turned into like a coping mechanism or just something to help me regulate my emotions, just to calm down. But I don't think that was why I originally started doing it. I just think it was something that happened along the way. So I finally hit 8th grade. And by this time in middle school, I really wanted to have a writing club. So actually, I don't remember if it was before or after I did the first like drafts of my Celest novel, but sometime early in middle school, I like drafted an idea to do a writing club because I was like, this would be really fun. And I still have all those files, and I ended up starting that writing club in college, which is pretty cool. Save all your files. Always save them, no matter how silly you think they are. The writing club didn't work in middle school because no one else, like of my friends or of like the staff, like wanted to, maybe not that they didn't want to do it, but they just weren't committed to it. So I didn't have like enough members to keep it up, basically is what I'm saying. But I was like, okay, I'll keep writing. So in 8th grade, I had an English teacher who just, she had her classroom structured differently than any other class I had taken at that point. So I was in my middle school's accelerated, like gifted program. And our classes were a lot, but they kind of had the same setup of this is the amount of time you have for the class, you have tests, you have whatever, and then usually at the end you have to do a big project. That was kind of how all of our classes worked, maybe outside of, maybe except for math. So we're nearing like the end of the year, the endish of the year, let's say last quarter. And she's introducing the big project that we have to do. We were expecting that, but we were dreading it, but we knew it was going to happen. But she did something completely different, which none of us had encountered and freaked us out. She had us do a DIY project, like a do-it-your-own project. It didn't have like a rubric. It didn't have instructions. It literally, build your own project, start to finish, and basically like we would make up our own grading criteria because there was no rubric. So we're freaking out. My whole class is freaking out. I'm freaking out because, again, I had a lot going on, and once you get my book or if you just read a synopsis of my book, you'll kind of get the idea of what I was going through. And I was like, I have too much to worry about. I have too much going on at home. I have too much going on, like, during, like, in my volleyball club. I've got, this is too much. Like, this is not something that I can handle. I was not happy whatsoever. It was just a time where I needed some stability, and instead of stability, we were shaking it up. Shaking it up is great. It's just, it wasn't a good time for me. So I'm really freaking out about this. I think I'm going to fail it. I end up hearing one of my classmates, and I talked about this in my intro video. One of my classmates, who's a genius and is still a genius, but was really smart back then too, she was like, oh, I'm just going to write another poetry book. And I was like, what do you mean you're going to write? First of all, another poetry book is crazy. How old are you in 8th grade? Like 12? We're like 12. What do you mean another one? And also, the great idea. So she loved to write poetry. I'm curious if she still writes poetry. I wonder if she's ever published anything. But she loved to write poetry, and she loved to write stories. So she would literally, like, make these books and bind them herself. Like, it was a real, like, book. And she was like, yeah, I'll just do another one. And I was like, you know what? Like, I have always wanted to write a book. And a few weeks, or maybe like a couple months before this, I had another run where I started a book and did not finish it. And I was getting fed up with myself. I was like, no, if we're going to actually write a book, we need to sit down and write it. So I figured that this project was a good excuse to force myself to finish it, because I was going to get a grade for it. I want to say that the project was, maybe we had 1 to 3 months to do it, maybe 2 months to do it. So it was a bit of time. And, you know, back then in my 12-year-old brain, I was like, oh, I can write a book in 2 months or 3 months or whatever. I was incorrect by a very large margin. But I didn't know. I had never really formulated like a book. And all the stories that I wrote, they were all like unrefined. So I wrote them, but I didn't go back and edit them. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. So I was like, I can do it in 2 months. That ended up being where the bare bone skeleton of my Celest book came to life. I ended up buying another notebook. I probably have used so many notebooks over the course of my life. If you ever wonder why my novel characters are using notebooks all the time, that is directly from me. I run through notebooks, and I don't even use all the pages. It's like I gotta buy a new one for a new season. I just bought a new one like a couple weeks ago, right, either on Thanksgiving or right before Thanksgiving. I bought a new one because I was like, I need another notebook, but it just has to match how I feel now. But anyway, I got a new notebook and every day in class I was writing in that notebook. I was writing character designs. I was writing the world building. I was writing the relationships between the characters. I was just writing. And I also was like drawing my characters. Like, what do they look like? All this. And it was at a perfect time because I was not in a good headspace. My mental health was horrible in middle school and high school. So it was something that I could throw myself into and actually genuinely be enjoying myself. For the time that I'm writing, I'm not worried about anything else except for the world that I'm building, right? So it was nice. And that also meant that I did it a lot. I spent a lot of hours just writing in this notebook. And then I would take those ideas out of the notebook and put them into my computer. And then we got Celest. So I'm pretty sure, and I can actually go check, I still have it. The original Celest manuscript, I'll say, the script, involved Celest, it involved Pep, and Imani actually was a Celest service dog. So there in the finished version, the main 4 characters are Celest, which is the main character, her 2 friends, Pep and Imani, and then her service dog, Buddy. So in the very original script, Imani actually didn't exist. Her purpose as a character was actually put onto Buddy, so they were kind of combined. But it was 3 chapters long. It was a short story. I say 3 chapters because I labeled them as chapters, but it's really just 3 parts. The whole thing could have just been read as a short story. And I want to say it was around 10,000 to maybe 10,000, 15,000 words. So just a short story. I realized after that, because so the month or the 2 months or however long we had to do the project, that was over. I realized that, number one, I was not about to finish that book in that time. I was wrong about that. But number two, I actually found something that I was happy doing. And at the time, I was not happy doing a lot of things. So no matter what grade I got, no matter if, let's just say the teacher gave me a 0 because I didn't complete the novel, I still wanted to do it. So basically my motivation had changed. My motivation changed from getting a good grade to actually finishing this book. And I wanted to. And so I did that. It was really hard. I had way too much going on. It took so much time. I graduated middle school. I went to high school. So that's 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. I skipped a year in high school, so I didn't have an 11th grade. 12th grade. And then my freshman year of college, I feel like I finished the book. And then that following year, the book came out. So for that stretch of time, literally all I was doing, I was like scrambling with all this other stuff. Okay, I have 5 minutes, let me write in the book. Okay, I have 10 minutes over here, let me write in the book. Okay, for some reason I got up in the middle of the night and I can't sleep, I'm writing in my book. It just became like something, I wasn't necessarily doing it every day. I didn't have a structured schedule like that. Like, I hear a lot of people say, you have to write 1,000 words a day, or you have to write 500 words a day. That just didn't work for me. My brain doesn't work like that. If I give myself a goal, it's either gonna be met and the writing is gonna be bad because I'm forcing myself to write, or it's just not gonna happen. So I dropped that. It's just, hey, when I have time, when I'm able to think about what I want to write, we're writing, and we're writing some more. So after 4 or 5 years, I cannot stand this book. I was angry even thinking about working on the book. I was so sick of it. When I said that I wanted to put the time in to finish this book, I was not expecting to do it for 4 or 5 years. That was ridiculous. It was just, I'm frustrated now even thinking about, like, I gotta open this and I gotta work on this same thing I've been working on for 4 or 5 years, and I thought I was gonna be done in 2 months. I just was frustrated. But I still was determined to finish it. Like, I was mad. I was gonna complain the whole way. But even still, I was going to finish it because I said I was going to finish it, and so that's what I was going to do. So then I finished writing it, and I will pause really quick. I want to say that throughout the stages of me writing this, I did not write the book in order. So the 3 chapters that I talked about that I wrote in 8th grade, they actually became the last 3 chapters. So no spoilers. I won't spoil my own book for you. I want you to go get it. But the relationship between the 3 characters did become prominent in the whole story, but the specific scenes that I wrote out back then became the last 2 or 3 chapters in the final book. And then I went back and I was like, okay, I need to give these people a backstory. I need to flesh them out. So I had the last 3 chapters, and then I went back to what is the finished chapter 8. So I started way at the end, or I'm sorry, for you guys over here. I started way at the end, and then I worked myself back to like the midpoint, and then I wrote here down, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I so want to be done with this, but then I was like, I need to flesh these characters out. And then I went to the beginning. So I wrote it in 3 stages backwards, which took a lot of time. And this next time around and forever, I will always do an outline for any other novels that I make, and including the ones that I'm making now. Also, throughout all those stages, I had beta readers. So I had my friends give me feedback. I had family give me feedback. I had strangers give me feedback. And by their feedback, I was confident that it was a good book. A lot of if not all of my beta readers cried while reading my book. And I'm not saying like crying like ugly crying or anything, but it just, I felt successful in my message if it always moved people to tears. So I had some confidence boosters along the way. And also I had people be like, you need to take that out. That doesn't make any sense. And I had to edit it. But that's okay. So we get to my freshman year of college, and I'm ready to start sending my book out to publishers. I originally wanted to traditionally publish my novel. And for you guys that don't know, you can either traditionally publish a novel or you can self-publish a novel. Traditionally publishing a novel is selling your work to a company to publish and print and gain profits off of. So that would be like if my book was published by Scholastic, I would have traditionally published through Scholastic. That's what I wanted to do. Self-publishing is the opposite. So literally self-publishing is publishing yourself. So instead of going through a company and like selling the rights to your work, you yourself publish the book and then do all the marketing, do all this, do all that. I wanted to just traditionally publish because, again, I was a bookworm. I knew all these big companies and everything, and I wanted to submit to a company so that my book can be part of like their community. I thought it was cool back then. So in order to publish that way, you have to have a literary agent, and these people are, well, you don't have to. Some smaller publishing houses don't require them, but most people do. So they're kind of like acting agents is the best comparison I can give. They find you companies that would like to read your book, they pitch for you, they do all this work, right? So I gave myself a year to pitch my book to the literary agents and then also those smaller publishers that didn't require the agent. And my reasoning was that it was my first book. I started writing it really young. I really honestly was not expecting it to be... basically what I'm saying is I wasn't going to be surprised if it didn't get picked up because it was my first try and because I was so young. So I gave myself a year to not lose my mind. Like, I'm like, okay, a year of rejection, and then we're going to shelve the book and we're going to write a new one and try again later, right? That was the idea. I ended up pitching for that year, and it went kind of how I assume everyone's experience goes, except for one thing was weird, which was that I wasn't getting a lot of form rejections. And form rejections are just like they have a pre-typed letter of rejection, and then they take someone else's name out, put your name in, and they send it to you. Just like they send it to everyone else. But I wasn't getting a lot of those. I was getting a lot of personalized rejection letters, which is weird. It's not normal. And a common theme amongst all the agents that were rejecting me was saying, hey, this book is up to industry standard. It tackles important issues. Like, it's good. We like it. But they kept saying that because of the themes and because of my audience, they would not pick it up because it's like a taboo subject in I assume within the publishing world. Which, first of all, that really shocked me. My book is about mental health in adolescence, and I wanted that to be a central part of the book because when I was growing up and I was going through things, I couldn't find any books that were like geared towards my age group of characters that were going through stuff like I was. And now I know why, because it's considered taboo. So I was like, oh, I didn't know that, of course. So I was like, okay, so I'm thinking, it's not going to get picked up. But I was happy that they said it was up to industry standard and that they liked the book. So I was kind of having conflicting feelings. Then, at the very end of that year, I had already set that I was going to put the book away. At the very end of the year, I got another personalized rejection from this was a small company, not an agent. And the person, the head of the company was a type 1 diabetic. She was a woman that we just had a lot of things that we shared, like just similarities. That's why I sent the book to her. And her rejection letter was long. But, basically she said the same thing, like, this is great, but we can't because the subjects and because it's aimed towards children, yada, yada, yada. But then She said in her letter, although, this is not word for word, but she said, although I can't pick this up, you need to find a way to publish this. And then my year ended that I gave myself as a time limit. So now I'm mad. I mean, I'm mad, but I guess I'm frustrated because I had put in my head, okay, we're shelving this, we're going to move on. And now this lady is like, no, you need to put this out. And I don't know how to do that. I'm 17 at the time. I didn't know how to self-publish. I didn't know any of this stuff. So my year ended, and I just kind of sat around for a little bit. I waited. And then after a period of waiting and thinking, I was like, okay, let me research self-publishing. Maybe I can do it. So I started researching, and it seems like something that I could do. It's a lot of information, but it's like, okay, like maybe we can try, see what happens. So I spent 3 months. So after this little break period that I had, I spent 3 months after that researching self-publishing, researching like taxes, researching legal stuff, just doing a bunch of research to figure out if I can self-publish. And somewhere within that 3 months, my spark for the book came back. And that was a really nice feeling. So I knew I was in a theater club at FSU at the time, and the leader of the theater club was an art major. So I asked them if they knew someone who I could commission to do a book cover for me, because I looked at like Fiverr and like online, and I saw that a lot of self-published like authors use, I think they're called pre-made covers. I might be wrong about their name, but basically the artist makes the cover beforehand and then they just put your name on it, which I didn't like that. I wanted mine to be unique and made for the novel. And then also, of course, I'm not paying someone to give me an AI cover. So that was a lot of people in Fiverr, even after I said I don't want AI. But anyways, I wanted to commission somebody, and I was like, hey, let me commission like somebody in college. This would be nice. So I hired the person to do this cover. They did a really good job. They're credited in here, but their name is Marcus. They did a wonderful job. Wonderful job. I think this captures the feeling of the book and also kind of what I pictured the characters to look like in my head. So I'm super happy about that. That was an expense. I just had the front. But I worked with them. They worked with me. They had incredible patience with me for being my first time. And also it's their first time doing a book cover. So it was great. I think it was a great matchup. I got the cover all worked out. It took a minute. I had to figure out like how to save it and how to upload it and da-da-da-da. We got the cover figured out. And then I learned about Amazon KDP through an author called Alexa Dawn, who's on YouTube. So I will link her channel. I think she's great. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go through KDP. So at that time, I didn't know about any other publishers. Like now I'm on Ingram Spark. I'm in local bookstores. I just didn't know about all that stuff. So KDP, okay. I figure out how to load all the files. I figure out all the, again, tax stuff. It's a lot. And then I set an opening date or a release date as September 14th, 2024. And then we just had to wait. I had to wait. It was really nerve-wracking, but I decided I wanted to shoot for the stars. I'd rather ask questions and get denied than to not ask and miss opportunities. So the day of my book launching, I called my local like Books A Million and asked like, hey, like I'm having a book come out. Like, is it fine if I bring people? Da-da-da. They ended up opening the store like an hour early, so a group of us could come in and celebrate my book launch, which was really, really nice. It was just nice. We took pictures and everything. It was great. And that was my launch day, and yeah, it was a little bit hectic, or not hectic like from other people. I was just super nervous because I'd never done something like this before, and I wanted it to go well. It went really well. But I was very nervous. So that is literally from start to publication day how my novel came to exist. Now, I do want to go a little bit like further in the future, because after I was able to do like have Books a Million have like a little event for us, I was like, let me look at these other bookstores. Like maybe I can work something out. So I ended up contacting all of my local bookstores, not at the same time. I went one by one, and asking like, hey, can I do an author signing? Can I get my book in here? Da da da. And I was very successful, which I still smile about. I smile about thinking that my book is on a shelf anywhere, but especially like actually in a bookstore was really cool. I had my first author signing at Midtown Reader in Tallahassee, which I will also link them. They're a great bookstore. I want to say they're probably the most popular indie bookstore in Tallahassee. But yeah, they let me come to, they had a book signing coming up really soon with 3 other authors, and they're like, hey, do you can hop in this one. I was like, great. I brought like, I think they told me to bring 20, but like 15 or 20 books or something like that. And again, was really, really nervous, but I had public speak. Like I have public speaking experience. I've done it since I was small. It's the same reason I don't have any problem talking like to the camera. But still, I was like, oh my gosh, people are going to get my stuff. It was just new. But it went very, very well. I sold out. I should have brought more books. I just didn't know. I sold out, and like the event still had like an hour left. I was like, dang, I should have brought more. But it was nice. I got to give people like, go to my website. I gave business cards. I talked to a bunch of people. It was awesome. But yeah, so I had my first book signing there, and then I haven't had any other book signings yet. They're coming. But I do have my book in every indie bookstore in Tallahassee except for one. So doing pretty good. And of course, like I'll start branching outside of Tallahassee, but this is just where I started. After that, I've done a couple of events at schools or like school programs where I talk to children, talk about my novel, talk about me. Basically the same thing that I'm going to do on this channel. I've gone and spoken at other places. Unfortunately, so the book came out in September. The next time that it was April, so 2025, this year, April, my college had a mass shooting, so I canceled every other event that I had. So unfortunately, I haven't done any in-person events in a little bit. I'm kind of starting to warm back up to the idea of like going out, doing this kind of thing. So in the near future, relatively, I'll probably do a couple more book signings, or events, and if there's any vending location, I love to vend. I love to do that. So we'll see. And also I want to mention, since I am talking about my events I'm going to do in the future, this version of this book is going away. So there will be a second edition of this book available pretty soon. But the cover is going to be changed, and also the About Me section is going to be changed. So if you have this version of the book, which is the only version out right now, you will notice that the cover is going to change, and my bio is very outdated in this book now. I've changed career trajectories, so everything else in the book is going to be exactly the same. If you have this book, unless you just want the novelty of having the updated cover and obviously know what I'm going to be up to, it is not a necessary purchase. It is not the sequel. It is just a second version of this novel. But I do want to mention that. So I am trying to get rid of all these that I have because these won't be printing very soon. So just to let you guys know that. So if you want this version with this cover, you can go to my website, which is always linked in the bottom of my videos, or you can reach out to me if you want a signed copy. I'm pretty sure you can also request a signed copy on my website. But yeah, get it while it's still here because it won't be here forever. Anyways, back to what I was saying. That's kind of been start to finish how my novel came to exist. That's pretty much it. I'm sure that there's stuff in between that might be that I probably didn't explain well enough. So if there's something I said and you're like, I want you to talk more about that, let me know. Leave a comment. I will gladly make as many videos about this book as you request because I love this book. This is I mean, how many years is that? That's like a, I'll say, lifelong dream to have a book, like publish a book. So it's mind blowing to me, even when I say that, or even when I'm like looking at it, I'm like, it's here. So yeah, if there's anything that you want me to explain further, or you just have a question about, maybe about the process, let me know. I will probably make a video response, but if it's something quick, I will just respond to you in the comments. But yeah, that's the end of this video for this week. As always, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.